So yeah, I want to talk about something. I had a discussion with a friend, and they asked me a question, and they got pretty upset with my answer because they disagreed. So I'm gonna put it out there because I guess they were surprised because it's me who gave the answer, and I'm pretty opinionated on some things. Um, but anyhow, so the question was: should pastors, evangelists, missionaries, whatever, those who preach from the podiums of sort, should they take, kind of strong political stances? Should they, if they support the majority of what Black Lives Matter does, should they get in the pulpit and talk about it? If, a black man gets shot, should they, you know, point it out on Sunday morning and highlight the plight of racism in American society today? Or let's say they're a little more politically conservative and they're like big Trump supporters. Should they be, waving the Trump banner and et cetera, et cetera? Um, and my answer was, eh, you know, um, I don't think there is something somebody should be doing. Like, I feel like the point of pastors and teachers and leaders in the religious realm is to, speaking for Christianity at least, my opinion is, to lead you to Christ, to lead you to a behavior that is um, Christ like, and teach you the things that Christ taught. And I feel like if someone is doing that, and you are listening to the teachings of Christ, and you're implementing Christ's behavior, if they're teaching you Christ likeness and a Christ nature in the actual way and context in which Christ carried himself, I think the listeners should be able to make their own decisions with regards to politics, etc., etc. Um, and let that be that. Um, in a general sense, so I guess what I was saying is I don't have a problem with the pastor never mentioning Black Lives Matter, never mentioning a particular emotion or feeling about Trump, as long as they're consistent and never getting involved in politics. Um, and I think you could even argue it shows some level of faith that they just teach you the teachings of Jesus Christ from biblical context, the nature of Jesus, and trust that Jesus will lead the pew layman, whatever the term is. Um, Now, alternatively, I think if you are a pastor and you've made some really strong stances or shown some really strong support for a particular politician or a particular movement or a particular group, I think you also should have some obligation to uh, provide critique um, when an individual or a group isn't uh, representing your values. There's such a thing as nuance. And if I can't critique or criticize, say, a movement, a politician, under any circumstance, or I can really, really go hard at one side, but not so much at the other side, only when I have to, then I think you kind of get into a form of idolatry there. Because we shouldn't be playing favorites. Our only favorite should be Jesus. We shouldn't feel any kind of way about correcting or addressing any fault more in another person, culture, interest group, or whatever than another. As a matter of fact, I would say the Bible calls us to critique each other more than we do those who don't proclaim to believe the things we believe. So yeah, I just think if someone teaches Jesus and you're hearing Jesus, I think folks will make the right decision. I think the problem is that there's a lot of leaders out there who realize if you simply stick to Jesus in the context in which Jesus taught, and who he was talking to and all those kind of things and what was really going on, and it takes a little bit of study to really get to the bottom of all that. I think a lot of pastors or leaders or whatever realize that if the laymen were just left with that, they may make decisions contrary to what the pastor feels is politically correct in his or her opinion, or politically expedient for his or her movement or belief system, values, etc., etc. And I think sometimes our leaders think because they are pastor or they are whatever title that whatever their thought is correct. Whatever their thought is right because they're so connected to God and God talks to them, so they can't never be wrong. And I think that's another flaw we kind of have as leaders. Just have a hard time sometimes saying, hey, I made a mistake, messed up. What I thought wasn't true, I wasn't right then. New information, see things differently. They have a hard time admitting and confessing those things. And I think another thing you have to consider is if you're a pastor who has, say, an all-black congregation, you are an all-white congregation, or majority, really strong majority, one way or the other. You kind of have the ability to take a little more liberty with your politics, cultural swagger, so to speak, because within your congregation, you can't cause a divide because most of the people there either A, probably already think like you do in that respect, or B, they wouldn't really be all that offended by a certain point or stance, even if they didn't necessarily agree with you. But on the other hand, if your church or your congregation is multi-denomination, or you're really trying to reach the world as a whole, like never mind just America, you got preachers and teachers out there who like their audience is literally the world, or their audience is literally all of America. Like they have a church, but they're nationally some world known. It may not be the wisdom of the Holy Spirit that would lead one to show a strong stance of support for a political congregation or a certain group or whatever the case might be, because the shepherd is thinking about the flock. And again, the whole objective, I believe, is to make disciples, teach people Christ-like behavior, teach them the behavior of Christ. And I keep saying Christ over and over because I think sometimes we focus too much on individuals in the Bible who wasn't Jesus and what they might have done. And I think if you do that, I think some feel like, that's where I should focus. I should focus on teaching Jesus. And some might say, hey, you got some preachers who, it's an opinion-based thing, I guess, who may not focus a lot on what things are wrong, and they focus more on what things are right. I'm like, hey, that's them, whatever. Because I feel like if I'm teaching you what's right, and I'm telling you what to do the things I'm telling you to do. It doesn't really matter if I'm jumping on this wrong or that wrong. When and when you're not doing that, because the opposite of right is wrong, right? But anyhow, friend didn't felt like I should have been a little stronger, given who I am and all. But I guess I'm not that strong. But yeah, click the link in the bio. Watch the video. I love you guys. I really do.